Well, New Zealand's in the news again, and not because they had another shooting, but because the government is still keeping the old shooting in the news. They're doing this, of course, in their effort to keep the shooting out of the news. They have completely banned the video from New Zealand and have threatened anyone caught, quote-unquote, possessing the video with 10 years in prison. Now, this is perhaps one of the most reactionary policies I've seen out of any government in the last 5 years. You cannot ban digital media anymore. We live in the age of the internet. It exists, okay? You know, it's a thought. It's information. You can't destroy information. At least not as easily as you could back in the day. South Africa, of course, was famous for banning lots of books that their government didn't like back in the day. And that was easier than this. People still got the books. Cuba does the same thing. Cuba bans all sorts of books. But people still get them in. Now, in the age of digital media, when you have the internet, it's completely impossible. But, you know, before I get to that, the idea of throwing someone in prison for possessing digital media, you do not possess digital media. Digital media is just ones and zeros, and it's not like the person's holding VHS cassette tape or something that has this video on it. The video doesn't exist in spatial reality. This video is as much real in its digital form, in its form of ones and zeros stored on a computer, as it is real in the minds of people who have seen it and can recall it. That's all this is information. So if they're trying to censor this video, then all they're criminalizing information. They're making people thought criminals like out of 1984. And, you know, it makes me wonder if New Zealand thinks that the video evidence of the murder of 48 people is so egregious that they must completely scrub it from the world, and that it simply cannot exist in the public's eyes. What would they have done with videos of 9/11 or of videos of war coverage, airstrikes, which could easily kill more than 48 people? New Zealand's been involved in a lot of wars. Could they possibly censor videos of New Zealand troops committing acts of war in other countries and hide it from their people? Could they want to maybe go to war in secret and then ban the video so that, news companies and papers and news channels in New Zealand cannot cover it? Because if you look at the history of New Zealand, yes, they've been roped into pretty much every major conflict since the Second Boer War. They were in both World Wars, the Malay Emergency, the Gulf War, the Second Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan. And, of course, in all these conflicts, you saw plenty of incidences where more than 48 innocent people lost their lives. Perhaps the fact that this occurred in New Zealand is what concerns the government so much. I guess perhaps if 48 people die in Afghanistan or in Yemen, the Kiwis are not so upset. But when 48 people die in New Zealand, well, then that's just too triggering for them, and the government can't allow people to see that they were unable to protect them. Perhaps the New Zealand government wants people to see innocent lives being lost in other countries so that they can point to them and say, see, look how great we are. You don't lose innocent lives in your country under our great stewardship, so you should vote for me. Ultimately, I think that's what this all is about. It's an embarrassment for the government that they could let this happen. But frankly, they shouldn't be embarrassed, because a crazy person is going to do whatever they want if they really put their mind to it, unless you live in a complete police state where everyone is locked in chains. But it looks to me like the Kiwis are building just that to prevent anything from happening ever again. It seems to me like they would much prefer a police state over a land of free people where someone someday might do something naughty. I've seen two reactions from the New Zealand government to this crisis. The first one was, well, of course we got to ban guns because guns are evil. Don't worry about the shooter, it's just all the guns. And don't think about all of the good New Zealanders who own guns. They're bad people. Okay, so that was the first thing. Just persecute gun owners. And now their second measure is censor any knowledge pertaining to this event. We want to scrub it from the public consciousness so that they don't think about it anymore. We're going to lock anybody in prison who shares evidence that this occurred in New Zealand. If that's not a police state, I don't know what is. I give the U.S. government a lot of crap and sometimes call them a police state, somewhat in jest, sometimes very seriously, but this is far worse than anything I've seen out of the United States in terms of just being blatant and open about it. Yes, the U.S., at least claims to be for, freedom of speech and all these things, but then they still send jackbooted thugs into people's houses. The difference here with New Zealand is that not only are they openly censoring speech and taking away people's guns, they're doing it with a smile. And it's just sickening. There really is a difference between governments like China, which are openly confrontational with their citizens, where everyone knows that the government is evil. Places like China, the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, everyone knew the government was evil there. But they just knew that they had to listen to the government lest they be caught in the crosshairs. But in places like Great Britain and New Zealand, there really is this sick idea amongst the public that the government is, good and just. And I think most people think that the government is itself justice. If the government tells them that something is good, then it must be. But the one silver lining out of this is that I think this story will prove that censorship in the 21st century is impossible. Because try as they might, New Zealand will not be able to block access to this video, because every time they put up a wall, people will find a way to get around it. VPNs exist. I don't know if the New Zealand government is aware of this, but they do. And not only that, Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, just used this video in a campaign rally in the opposite sense, saying, look at what these white folks are doing to the Muslims. You got to vote for me to protect the Muslims in Turkey. He used this video, the video of the people being shot, as propaganda for himself. So the weak government in New Zealand really, I don't think, will have much effect in the end. I hope that people in New Zealand do not give up their guns, but we'll just have to see what happens. If you gained anything of value from this video, I'd very much appreciate you giving it a thumbs up and clicking that subscribe button, because I do upload every day and I try and keep it relevant. So I'll see you all tomorrow.